In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at creating a star class. So we want to create a custom shape in the form of a star to use in our game. So it's going to be a bonusing where if you collect stars, you get bonus added to your score at the end of the game. So we're going to create a new tab to create our class. So make sure you've got your dodgeball game open and you've got your 4 tabs here now. You've got your dodgeball, your ball, your button, your timer, and we're going to go new tab and we're going to create star. Hit enter. Alright, we've got our star come up. So what we're going to do with our star is we're going to just get it up and running by the exact same method we have in all our classes. So we've got class star. And we're going to open squiggly brackets and put some closing squiggly brackets. And just while we're doing that, we're just going to make sure that we have the right file open. So I'm working in my dodgeball project. You should be too, not in my temporary dodgeball profile. Okay, so first thing we need to do for a start is we need a position. We need to give it a position. So we're going to start with our variables Pvector. And we're going to call it pos again is equal to new Pvector, and we're going to start 0, 0 positions. So from here, where are we going to head? Now, our star's got to have some different kinds of variables this time in it, and we're going to have a integer. Int that's going to be our score value, so score and capital value. And this is going to be the value of what the stars are worth. And we're going to set it to 20. So they're worth 20 points each. Maybe we'll change that later on. We are going to have a Boolean that's going to be alive. That's going to be the variable name. And we're going to set it to true to begin with. So we want our stars to only be up for a short amount of time. So we're going to have a Boolean in here. And the other thing we're going to have is a timer on our stars to know how long they have till they disappear on us. So we're going to actually use our class we used, our timer class that we built, go timer. And we'll put it timer alive. That's the name of our timer. So we're actually using a class now inside a class. So we're inheriting everything from our timer, putting it inside here. So there are variables that we're going to use for our star. And now we need to create our constructor. So star, because that's the name of our shape. And we've got to open and close squiggly brackets, and we have our circle brackets here. So this is our constructor. This is how we create a new star, because we love stars. Alright, so let's see what we're going to do. Oh, what's the other thing we're going to need? We're going to need a color. Oh, I forgot the color. Never forget the color. We're going to need it to color. And we'll just set it to black to begin with. Nearly forgot the color. Alright, we've got to have a nice gold star color. Maybe we have purple stars. It's up to you what color you make it. Alright, so when we build our constructor, we're going to go position is equal to new position. So we need a Pvector, and what we need in here is we're going to randomize the position of this, but we want it not to be right on the edges of the screen. So for our X, we're going to come 30 in from the left hand side, and we're going to be width, because we don't know what our width is, minus 30 on the other side. So we're changing it up a little bit. We don't want to be right on the edges. We just want to be away from the edges. Same again in our game. We don't want to be right at the top or right at the bottom. So we're going to go random. And we're going to move it. Let's put them a bit further down, 80, because that's where we are going to spawn right at the top. Our balls are trying to kill us, so we're gonna move the stars away from them, so we're not smashing the player too heavily. And we're going to put it height minus 30 from the bottom, so it's just not sitting on the bottom. So they're our two variables that we've got for our Pvector, and I've completely forgotten to write random in the first one, so just make sure you do write random in the first one. So we've got random between 30 and the width minus 30, and we've got random 80 to the height minus 30. So make sure you do get your random in there, the first one, if you copy that line of code. Alright, so we set up its position, it's randomized its position. Now we're going to do a score. Value is going to be equal to, we've already set it to 20, but actually we might just leave that alone. We've already set it to 20. If you want to change it, you can just change it up here to whatever you want. Maybe you want to make it 50. 50 is an awesome number. Who doesn't like 50? Alright, so now we need to set up our timer. So timer alive, and we're going to set it up to a new timer, and this is where it gets a little bit crazy. We're going to put int open bracket, and then we're going to put random open bracket. So now see how we've got 3 open brackets in a row. Now we're going to put our time between 5 seconds and 10 seconds. So our stars are only going to be on screen for 5 to 10 seconds, somewhere in that time frame. What that does is it randomizes between 5 and 10 seconds. The random function actually gives you a float in return, but our timer needs an integer. So this is why we put integer here and open another bracket. So we need to close our random, then we need to close our integer, and then we need to close off our time. So we've got 3 brackets in a row, and finally we can put a closing semicolon at the end, and I spelled time alive wrong. So just make sure your variable name is the exact same up there as it is there. Sometimes it's good just to copy, paste, make sure they're the same, done. Alright, so we've got our constructor creating a star. We just need to give it a random position and a random time that it's going to be alive for. Now we need to update it. So in here we're going to have our void update, open circle bracket, close circle bracket, and we're going to put our timer in here. We need to update our timer. How do we update our timer? We go time alive, because that's our variable name, dot, and we want it to count down. So remember our functions we created when we created our timer. So there it is, time alive dot count down, and if you look in your timer, you can see that is the function name we have there. That will decrease our timer over in seconds. So the second thing we need to do is when our timer gets to 0, that's when we want to change our boolean from being alive to being dead, so we know when to destroy our star. So in here, I'm going to put another space, and we're going to go if time alive is less than or equal to 0, we are going to do something, opening squiggly brackets, closing squiggly brackets. Make sure you're not putting, oh, what have I done? Time alive, copy, paste, yep. And what do I feel like I've done something wrong? Not sure. No, it doesn't like that. Just done something strange. Oh, time alive dot. Actually got to get the time out of it. So time alive is the class. We actually got to get the variable dot the time, the actual time out of it. So get the time out of it. Set to less than or equal to. If it is less than or equal to 0, we want our boolean up here, our alive, to be equal false. False. There we go. So now that sets that boolean to false. We're going to use that later on when we want to destroy our stars, when our timer runs out on how long they last. So it can be between 2 and 10 seconds at the moment, or 2 and 5, sorry, 5 and 10. I'll get it right in a second if I actually read my code correctly. See there, 5 and 10. And after that time has elapsed, we want to destroy them. So that's all we need in the update loop. We don't need to move it. The star's going to stay in its position. Nothing's going to happen with it. So now we actually got to render the star. This is where it gets complicated, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a shape that's not a standard shape. It's not an ellipse. It's not a rectangle. It's not a line. It's a whole bunch of lines connected together to create a star. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a special function inside here that creates a star. And we're going to see a lot of different bits of code. So we're going to call this star, void star, lowercase star. And we're going to put in some temporary variables. So we need a float x, float y. These are the x and y positions of it. These are just temporary. We're going to put float, and we're going to need a radius. So here's your mass coming into play again. Radius 1 and float radius 2. And then we're going to need one more thing, is an integer of how many points we want. So that's the number of points on our star that we want. Alright, and we open and close circle brackets to create our function. Alright, so in here what we need to figure out is we need to remember how much angles there are in a circle. So there's pi is half of a circle, so 2 pi is a whole circle, and we need to get the angles to line up the points. So if we say we want 5 points, we need to divide that by 5 and get that amount of angle. So we're going to create a temporary variable called float angle, and we're going to make it equal to 2 underscore pi. That's a special variable, gets the value for pi times pi, so 2 pi's, so pi plus pi. And then we want to divide it by our temporary variable that we used up here is the number of points. Cool. So that gets the angle between all the points, and that's how much it needs to rotate around when we're creating this. And what we need is also, in between the outer points, we need the inner points, the ones that point inwards in towards the star, and they're halfway between each angle. So we're going to create another float called half angle, with a capital A, equals angle, our angle that we just created up here, divided by 2, because that'll get half of it. Excellent. So now we've got those 2 temporary variables. We can begin to create our shape. And to create a dynamic shape, we actually use a begin shape, and we start drawing lines, and then we close the shape off at the end. So we're going to start by calling a special function called begin shape. See, it comes up blue, and we got semicolons at the end. And then we're going to loop until we've gone the whole way around. So we've moved our angle around the whole way around a circle. So we're going to move by an angle. So we're going to do a for loop. So we're going to go for, is where it gets complicated. Our temporary variable A is equal to 0. So we start at 0 top. And then we go A, when A is still, while A is still less than 2 underscore pi, which is a whole circle, we want to keep increasing A plus equal it, so we're adding on angle, which is our variable that we figured out how many points we wanted. We divided 2 pi by the number of points, and we got this angle. So we're going to open squiggly brackets, close squiggly brackets. So this is a lot of maths here. So if you remember from maths class angles, and you remember pi, this is going to come in handy. So first, we need to get the outer point position for its x and y. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a temporary variable called sx. This is the outer point, and it's going to be equal to x, which is our starting position that we put in as a temporary variable here. So that's our start position, plus, and cos. Who remembers the function cos in maths? Cos our angle, which is this bit here. So it starts at 0, so that's 0 at the moment, times by our radius, number 2. And who remembers that? That's this variable up here. So that's our outer radius. So if we've got a circle, we've got an inner radius, which is where all our points inner ones are, which is the first one. And then we've got all our outside areas. So I'm just going to bring up paint. Okay, so let me explain this in a little bit more detail. So if we have two circles, we've got one circle and we've got a second circle. This inner circle is radius 1, and this is S2. So we've got radius 1 and we've got radius 2. Now our outward facing points are going to look, it's going to look something like this. We're trying to create this star here. As you can see, the points line up on the outside of our circle, and the inner points line up on that circle in the middle. So what we started out is we started here, and we've moved around how much we want a point to be at. That's how much we moved around, and we're figuring out where it is in relation to the center, how far out we need to go to get its X position. That's what that piece of code does right there. This line here, that's what it's doing, is finding that position. And then we also want to find the position of this point. And we're going to create these as points. So first we found the X, now we've got to find the Y. So let's find the Y next for this outer point. Float SY is equal to Y plus cos A times radius 2. So we found our X and Y coordinate for this point out here. And we're going to set that to a vector, which is a point. It's called a vector, vertex, but it's just basically a point. And we're going to put SX and SY inside it. So that gets our first point. And shapes are built up of these vertexes. So we need lots of different points to make up a star. Now we've got to get that inner one. So we're going to go, our inner one is starting from 0. It's our inner one, which is this point here. So we've got this and this point, these 2 points. We've done that one, we're getting this one. So we're making these points, and this is what it's going to look like. So we've got to get another couple of points. We're just going to go over the top of these variables. We're going to use these variables again. Sx is equal to x plus cos. Now we want A plus our half angle. I think I've just realized that we're actually not finding the point I'm just been talking about. We're actually going, we've done this point and we're doing this point now. So we're skipping that point. That will come around, back around when we get to the top again. So we're doing this point and we're doing this point. And each time we cycle around, we do the outer point, and then that point, and that point, and that point, that point, that point, that point, that point. So we're going around in the star shape, starting here and going around. That's how it's going to go looping through this for loop. And then we just need to go finish off this by going radius. Because it's the inner radius, this is the short point. This is the short point down in here. It wants to be on this radius, not on the radius 2. So it's on radius 1. So radius 1. Hopefully I've completely confused you by now. And we're going to do the exact same thing for sy is equal to y plus, let's just put a space in there, cos, open it up again, a plus the half. We want to move it around about half angle times, again, we want the smaller radius. 1. And we're going to set that to another vertex. Vertex sx dot sy. So we've got our two vertexes. We got that one, and then we built that one. Now it's going to loop back up to the top and do this one, and then this one, 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 then this one. Once it's done all those, it will break out of this loop. So we leave the loop alone now. And when we get to the last, once it's done everything, we want to end shape. And we're going to close this. We're going to close the shape off. So we just made a shape by going around and setting up each of these points, starting here, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's got 10 points to make up this star, and it's got a 5-point star. That's if we put 5 as our number of points we want. If we had 6 or 7, you'd have 14 points, 12 or 14 points, because that's how many you need to go around in the shape. We are going to use this function now to actually render it to screen. Alright, so just make sure that you got your closing bracket here for your star function. So you can see it here. You got your closing for your for loop here. Alright, underneath this, make sure you got that last bracket in. This is a pretty big file to create. We need our void render like we always do. We write void render, open close circle brackets, and then we open and close squiggly brackets underneath it. And what are we going to do in here? Again, because we're creating a complex shape, we need a complex way of rendering it. And what we're going to use is a matrix. It's a special kind of process that enables us to render these vertexes in sequence to screen and move them into the correct position on the screen and fill them with color and all that sort of stuff. So inside our render, we're going to push a new matrix to the screen that we want to render. That's what we're going to call pushing a matrix. So starting a new one, we're going to move everything inside this matrix, translate, which is the same as move, everything to our position that we created right at the top, our function, our variable, position.x and position.y. So that moves everything inside this matrix to the correct spot. And oops, I had to put a comma in there instead of a dot. Now we want to fill it with the correct color, which is our color. And I don't think we've set up our color correctly at the top here. No, we never set up our color correctly in the constructor. So I'll leave that till the end. We'll just finish this off. Now we're going to actually draw our star. So we're going to use our star function. So this star function we're going to use down in here. We're going to go star. We're going to open up our circle brackets. Now we've got to put in our parameters. It needs our floats and our integer. So we need an x and y position. We're going to set these to 0. These need to be at 0, 0, because we've already translated it into our correct location through the translate function. This is where it gets a little bit crazy. Now we need our inside radius. So this is our smaller radius, and we're going to make that 5, and we're going to have our larger radius. So we're talking about our radiuses again. So we've got a small radius in the inside, large radius on the outside. So we're going to go from 5 and 10 on the outside one, and we're going to put a 5-point star in because that makes it nice and simple. So we've got our star function, star. We're drawing our star. And the last thing we need is to close this matrix off and pop it onto the screen. So we're pushing it to create it, and then we're popping it onto the screen. So we're going to pop matrix. And there we go. That's how we render the screen. A little bit more complicated than normally, but that's because we're using a complex shape. So I'm just going to put some comments in here. Render star to screen. Must be inside void draw. There we go. Now this is creating our star. Creating the shape of a star. That's our star function. That's just used inside internally. We've got to update updates the alive timer to and checks to see when it is dead. It needs to be in the drawer again, so it's to be in void draw. And we've got our constructor. Funnily enough, I forgot to set up our color, so right back up the top here now in our constructor, we're going to put one more line in and set up our color, because I feel like our color should not be black for a star. That's pretty boring color for a star. So we're going to put this as a color, and we're going to make it a goldy looking color. So that's going to be 255, 223, and 0. And there we go. There's our star class. So we're going to be using this star class when we go to add some extra bonuses that player can try and pick up in our dodgeball game. So that's it for the star class. And we'll be, next tutorial, we'll be moving on to actually starting to create some of the content of the game. We don't need to set up any more classes now. Hopefully they all work. And if they don't, we'll just go around and fix anything that we've missed when we start programming this.